Welcome to Off the Shelf. I'm your host, Yvonne Wolf. Today our special guest is Kathy O'Malley. Kathy O'Malley's books are available at Glenview Library on the local author's shelf, and that's how I met her. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you.
Tell us about your work. For the last 30 years, you started with a very local company, Bradford Exchange.
Correct.
Can you tell us about how you found that position and what you
let's see.
did there?
Yeah, I'm a Chicago girl by birth, born on the south side of Chicago. And when I started looking for work as an illustrator, I happened to come all the way out here to Niles to interview for that job. And I got it and was employed there as an illustrator, designing plates and statues, giftware, all sorts of products for them. So, yeah.
So it's something like Christmas plates and collections, right? And
collector's plates.
Collector's plates.
Designing, doing actual drawings, basically. I wasn't so much of a painter or finished product person. I was just the illustrator. So I would be the facilitator for finding that my work would help them find and hire their finished painters to do the actual plates.
I see. So you perhaps get the idea
from
words
into
a sketch.
Exactly.
Okay, because people don't know what they're
what
really
that
looking
means.
for.
Yeah.
Yes, I see that. So you're very visual when
Right.
you hear people talk, right?
That's right.
That's very interesting.
So if I was going to do, for instance, a collection of figurines,
yes.
I would do the actual drawings of figurines based on the topic or subject, the theme that they were asking for. And I would give them rotational views of the figurine, front, side, back.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you think of a time before computers?
Yeah,
and to
exactly.
Just produce
exactly.
that.
To draw.
And you said you started with architectural renderings. Did you? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Back when I was putting myself through Columbia College in the, this was the late 70s, and I wanted to keep myself employed and pay for my apartment, so I started doing home portraits. And it just started to snowball. I would get commission after commission after commission, and basically that's all that I was doing.
Wow, and this
while
is
I put myself through school. And they were
watercolor?
done in watercolor. I started in pencil, all pencil, and then I went to watercolor and pen and ink. So it's the collaboration of those two together.
And you have to be a fast worker, right?
Well, actually, no. It's very slow, meticulous work. Yeah, very detailed, very slow. Yeah, my orders were always backed up, but it's just, the nature of being a solitary painter, on your own. But I loved it and did quite a few, probably to date between 600 to 800, somewhere in there, portraits. Yeah.
Well, you have a very prolific career, though. You have done greeting cards, right?
Greeting cards, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about greeting cards?
Well, once I left Bradford, I just broke off on my own with the help of an agent. And just working with that agent began the whole journey of finding book publishing. And book publishing leads to other kinds of publishing, magazine publishing, greeting cards, and so on. So that's how just the evolution of keeping myself employed was always, as an illustrator, was always my goal, just to stay employed as a freelancer. And I have to be diversified. And I love doing new, different things all the time. So
let's talk a little bit about publishing houses. How do you sign up with them? Do you just show them your works, or how do they find you? Yeah.
Well, back in the day, it was before computers. It was phone calling, making contacts that way, and large directories. I'm going to call them. They look like the Yellow Pages, and imagine a great big thick book filled with illustrators in there. My agent would have, for instance, my agent had maybe 50 people like myself employed under her.
Yes.
And she'd have us in this big guide. And that's how people would find us as well. I mean, the old-fashioned way, looking through these books. And now it's, of course, computer and different.
Well, tell us a little bit about this, because we always wonder how publishing houses match you with an author, right? And because the
Right.
authors don't find their own illustrators, and you don't
Right.
know, right? You rarely know the authors
Never.
prior to a project, right? So
Never.
how do publishing houses make their decisions?
Well, the publishing house would, for instance, call me and ask me if I had the time available to do a
Okay.
book. And of course, I'd have to read the manuscript and decide if I thought I was suitable.
Yes.
They would think I was suitable, and then I'd have to read it and think, yes or no, could I do this? Is this my...
Expertise area.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So let's see.
So, for instance, when I did My Three Homes,
Which is available at Glenview Library.
right, published by Imagination Press. It's a darling book about finding love, a metaphor for a child being placed in someone's home.
Yeah, foster
So because it was a dog and because I love animals and I feel very comfortable painting animals,
That's
I knew I
right.
was suited for the book. They also wanted multicultural individuals in the book, and I'm comfortable doing that. So
Yes.
it was a perfect match.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't always go that way. I have certainly started projects where we stopped, you know,
Yes.
before we got too much further because their vision and my vision wasn't the same.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I believe the style you mentioned
Yeah.
sometimes is the animated characters versus
Right.
I don't know the correct artistic
Yeah.
term for it, but realistic.
Yeah, they're very
people, right?
different. Yeah,
they're very different.
Yeah,
right?
it's in the
I see
business they
that.
might call it stylized, but to the average eye it'd be cartoon.
Yes.
So I don't illustrate like a cartoonist or stylized. I'm somewhere in between real and animated and humorous.
Yes.
So my work it has always been a little bit in between, because there are certainly children's books where they want a very realistic
Yeah, sometimes yes.
characters, very realistic,
Expressions,
expressions,
and, right
and you must be exact.
to that
Right.
to that style. But then you have a humorous
But
touch
I like
to
that,
your
yeah,
characters, right?
I like that. I really like. I also enjoy just making things fun, fanciful, fantasy. You know. So
I noticed that your characters they look like they're more like elf-like, and
Yeah.
they look bouncy.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
there's a certain
yeah, that's a very good
skip.
eye.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
skip to their steps. You
Yeah.
know, so that's that you probably don't want that with every
No,
story, right? So
no, and I
perhaps-
might not get a
Right, I
particular
see.
project because I'm not suited for that.
But that's
But,
funny. That's
yeah.
interesting. I mean, I never think about like
Right.
how do they choose
Right,
authors
one
and-
person over another.
over an
Yeah.
illustrator, right?
Right.
That's really interesting, and and that will bring us to the newest book you have, which is called Chicago's the Place.
Chicago's a
And
place.
and this is a self-published book, so it's very different from the old publishing houses, right? Can you tell us a little bit about the story and maybe how you met the authors?
Well, after, I'd say probably about 10 years ago, when publishing started to change, and that, it was just slowing down, and based on just the economy and what was happening in the world. So on the other side of that, the flip side of it is because of some of these changes, computer generation and
Yes.
it's become very, very easy for the average person to do self-publishing. Where
Yes.
15, 20 years ago, it was an enormous amount of effort to do that
Yes.
for a number of reasons. So several years ago, I was contacted by a mother and daughter team, Pamela Bove and Mary Carol Beckman, a mother and daughter, who both authors, and Mary Carol is the teacher as well, came to me. They found me on the internet. I don't know them, but they happen to be living in Arlington Heights, or at least Pamela does, her mother, and Mary Carol's in the city. And after they wrote this story, based on their own personal history, really is what it is. It's kind of a story about
Their family.
their family. Their grandmother always took one of the grandchildren, each one of the grandchildren, on little tours through Chicago. And
And then she would pepper it with her
all
own
her
experiences.
right,
like this
all her
is where-
experiences.
yeah.
So this story happens to be centered around a little girl by the name of Lily, and she's brought from, you see her embrace her grandma, and the two of them spend a week together going through all the sites in Chicago, whether it be Navy Pier, Willis Tower, which is now called Willis Tower, but it was...
Yes, Sears and...
Sears,
yes.
you're right. Now I'm used to saying Willis Tower, but anyway, so it would go on and on and on, and it's just, it really is, it made me want to go down in the city and go to some of these places that I really actually haven't experienced.
Well, that's a very interesting
Yeah, it's
approach,
cute.
right?
It's
Because
very cute.
it's how that's probably the most realistic way you can go back in time with someone, right? If,
Really sweet. In
grandmother
fact, there's
could-
a page in the book, it's a pizza page, where grandma and her granddaughter are sitting, Lily, sitting at a, and again, because of copyright reasons, there are certain things
you
they
can-
had to go through
Yes.
to make sure we could, what we could say in the book, what we could, just basically, could we use the Cubs? Could we use the Sox logo?
Right.
So she went through a little bit of a headache to get all that licensing, but we are in there as the Sox, we're in there as the Cubs. But they're out to pizza, so back to where they're at. They're out to have pizza, and we can't say where they're really at, but everybody knows because the backdrop
Right.
is all the signatures on the wall. And because this is a personal book for this family, she gave me over 200 names that she wanted written on that wall.
Oh my goodness.
And all the silly names, you know, from whether it was their pet names or their Mimi names and Mammy and all the cousins, and just everybody is on there. So when you look at the book and you come to that page, it's all that graffiti in the backdrop that means something to all those huge family members.
Right.
And on top of that, I get to, when I sell the book, offer the book to my family, I put everybody I'm related to on the backdrop of that
Wow.
page. So it's a really, and I can still add names, and because I can do it with a marker now, and I can personalize it for even you if you wanted to give it to one of
Someone.
your,
Yes,
yeah.
of course,
So they can find their names in there, and they can
Yeah.
find their pet names in there.
No,
So
that's
it's a
that's
very
amazing.
clever way to personalize a book on
that
that
is.
page. Yeah.
And personalize the experience.
Yeah,
as
very,
well.
very,
Yeah.
very sweet book, yeah. A big effort, though. It took about at least a year and a half to complete the book.
Is that long for your
That's
usual
a-
assignments? This is quite long?
A 32-page book takes anywhere from a year to 2 years.
Really? I had no idea, because, you know, we go through picture books all the time.
Yeah.
Right? We don't think about,
Right.
well, it's about 30 pages, right?
Right,
But
32 illustrations, give or take, somewhere in there, 32 pages, and there's a lot of time and a lot of work goes into it.
it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes. So Chicago's the place. Well, let's take a look at that.
Okay. Okay, so we were talking about, this is the page that, where Lily and Grandma are out.
Yes, isn't this sweet?
Isn't that
I
cute?
see I like how rounded your characters are. And I see lots of names, 200 names. And you can personalize this book.
Right. So for instance, if somebody here wanted this book and they had maybe 10, 12 family members, pets, old addresses, anything you wanted to add, I literally just write right over any of these spaces in here with a permanent marker.
Yes,
And
how clever.
you wouldn't even know that it was added. And the
Right.
kids just have a ball.
Finding it. Yes,
finding
yes.
it. I've drawn dogs in there, cats in there.
Oh.
I've done all sorts of, silly family names.
Then I
and-
have to get one for my boys,
It's
Benjamin
cute.
and Oliver.
God, it's a cute idea. I thought
It
it was
is.
very clever. And I never thought I'd get 200 and some names in there, and it's so easy. Of course, I've had some family members tell me they can't find themselves in there, but everybody's in there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You can't,
Yeah.
you can't. You just have to look up harder. It's like, Where's Waldo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
hidden it's on the cover, of
It's on the
course.
cover.
Yeah.
They use the cover. Yeah.
And did they have to design their own book jacket, or is it you? Do you
And
design
again,
the cover, or do
I
you?
designed the cover as
you
well,
design cover and
but
the
with
back
the help of
design.
my designer.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
So in self-publishing, then
Now,
all
whose
their
job is it, right?
well, that
It's a-
job becomes a
Shared
it's a shared
collaboration.
a
Yeah.
collaboration between author, designer, and printer. Yeah.
That's right. So do you feel that the publishing houses, it was easier to work with a publishing house because they assign all the
It's far simpler to work with a publishing house than it is being self-published. But the more that I've done this,
You enjoy the flexibility
the
now
flexibility,
too, right?
and I just more, actually, it's a big learning curve for me
Yeah.
to understand what goes into printing, what goes into the collaboration,
Right,
and so on. Licensing, all the work they had to
That's
do
true,
to
that's
get
true,
the Cubs
yeah.
and Sox to cooperate, because we talk about the Cubs and Sox.
Yeah.
Just a little note about this inset, this page. There were no pictures of Lily
Grandma
and Grandma
all?
face to face through the whole book.
No.
And it just so happens, it starts in the school. They start
Yes.
in school,
So
and
they're
they go
not
through.
together,
And,
right.
and it wasn't until we finished the book that we never, and I don't want to give away the little ending, but it's either in the
Yes,
Willis
they
Tower.
are. Yeah.
And over here they're at Harbor
You
fishing.
can see that.
Well, they had said, we need to see Grandma and Lily
Together.
together. So we created this
Yes.
page.
Added one last.
Yeah, one last page, and put that little insert in. But my designer, who I work with now, and I'm still working with her, helps pick all this. That is type style,
Yes.
and all that comes into play.
Designer. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a
text,
yeah.
size, shape, there's the littlest
clever.
details
See,
come into.
That's what we like to know on this program
Yeah,
too. Like
yeah.
who makes those decisions, and we
Right.
appreciate books so much more after.
Right, so much work goes into it. Yeah.
Wow. Tell us about how self-publishing has changed for you, though.
Well,
How do you connect with them? Is it harder for
Again,
them? Well,
because-
this one she found you through internet, right?
Right.
Do you still use an agent to?
Well, I said goodbye to I had 2 agents over my career, and I eventually said goodbye to them probably 15 years ago. And ever since then, it's like anything, you just have a website and you get a name for yourself that I never needed to do much marketing after that.
Really?
After that, it would just
Testimonies,
perpetuate things.
Yeah.
One thing would lead to another.
Referrals. Yeah.
Referrals would just, and if somebody was looking for me, they'd find me under my name. And so that's how all my self-publishing work has perpetuated itself. There are ways to continue to market if I want all that work, but I'm starting to slow down. I don't want that much work.
Right.
It's a lot of work.
Yes.
And when I'm involved in a book, like I am right now, a brand new book, I'd prefer not to have
More books, right?
more
At the same
sitting
time.
people waiting, you know.
Yes,
So I'll take tiny things in between projects, something that I can, for instance, recently I did a commission for a young couple. She wanted to surprise her husband with a painting of his favorite oasis, which is his backyard, where he has a koi pond and trees and flowers and just a beautiful, beautiful backyard. So I took photographs of the entire backyard, consolidated, designed it, and did a painting. Now, see, that painting didn't take me more than a couple of weeks, rather than working on a book for a year and a half. So I could complete a acrylic painting. It was relatively large, but they loved it.
Okay.
So that was nice.
When you produce, let's say, 32 paintings, right? Do you have to produce more than that? I mean, if they get weeded out, or does
No,
that?
the process of actually doing the work is start with thumbnail sketches. So imagine little tiny 1 inch by 1
like a
inch,
storyboard.
like a storyboard, right? So that's for placement and design and shape and the flow of the book.
Yes.
Those are approved, whether it be for publishing or self-publishing. They're approved by individuals. And then from there, I do full-scale sketches. Again, that goes through approval process. And sometimes there's 2 and 3 sketch changes. Move that person out, put somebody else in,
Yes.
make this bigger, make that smaller.
Angle changes.
Angle changes. For the most part, though, most books go pretty smoothly, especially if they are self-directed, art-directed prior to my touch. If I'm given the opportunity to, do what I want, there might be more changes because one's vision is different than mine.
Oh, yes.
But when it's heavily art-directed, then I can give them exactly what they want. We go to full scale, those are changed. And once I go to finished paint, there's usually an agreement that that's it. There's no more changes to be made. If
Right.
there is, then it's a another arrangement, another
But that's
contract.
unusual.
It's unusual.
Right? Yeah, and
Although I have certainly had to change things, fix things, and I go back to the painting, and nobody would ever know this, but I literally would just patch
alter.
it,
Oh,
alter
yes,
it, patch
yeah.
it. Now, since I work in watercolor, I'd have to go to acrylic or gouache, something called gouache, and this is literally plastic paints. That's what acrylic is.
Yeah.
And I would paint right
Cover
over and
it,
alter.
Yes.
You know, thin, thicken, whatever I needed to change on something. Yeah. So
That's interesting.
it's a
We
bit of a
didn't
challenge,
usually think
but
that way.
because I did so much, because I do so many versatile, different kinds of things, I'm very comfortable with
Making changes.
making
and, yeah.
changes, doing different things. I'm just comfortable
Reworking
with that.
them, yeah.
Reworking,
Yeah.
you know.
And that's not everyone.
No.
I think. Yeah.
No.
Because we usually don't think of artists redoing part of the painting. You know, we
Yeah.
don't think about you doing repair work. You
Right,
know? So,
right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. Back
Yeah.
in the day, before computers, there were artists that were employed to do just that, to take magazine photography and
Yes.
tweak photography that way, literally painting on film and
Yes.
so on. So all
Airbrushing,
airbrushing
yeah.
and all that that's
Physically.
physically
yeah.
used to be hand done.
Right.
I still enjoy it. I'm not interested in computer generated art. It's fine, it's beautiful, it has its niche and its place, and it may be the norm in the future, but I think there'll always be
Oh yeah, I hear.
always
Yeah, I
be
hear
hand
that. Yeah. Work.
because the artists they're just, it's just, there's too much connection between the hand, the eye, and the paper, or the canvas, or the,
Yeah. And you mentioned Bradford exchange, and you met your husband there.
That's where I met my husband, 28 years ago. Right.
He is an illustrator as
He
well. Or?
is a writer. He's also a manager there. But he's a very good artistic guy, and he's probably my harshest critic. And,
It's not yourself.
oh, that's first.
That's first.
He's second. But he's also, he's got great vision as far as design, and he's just very good. And he's also been helpful in actually my work in many, many ways.
I think that is, it does take a very, a certain special talent, right? To see things visually and to see art. Because there are people, I'm sure you met people who just don't see pictures.
Sure.
Right?
It's like I don't understand mathematicians, I don't understand engineers, and you know, computer, I fall apart at the computer.
So you don't, your work, do you scan them in computers? I mean, do you?
No, everything is hand done. Everything I do, when I'm finished,
Yes. The finished product.
Finished product I can do, well, it's called hire somebody to get it done. But I'd make color copies, and I can do things like that. But I don't do any of the electronic work.
I see.
As far as, but I have things on CDs, and you know, but I have designers and people that help me for things like that.
Tell us a little bit about how you found living in Glenview all those years.
Oh, I loved Glenview. Absolutely loved Glenview.
Did you feel a lot of a sense of community and
Huge,
support for art?
Huge sense of community. I did not meet a lot of artists in Glenview till later on. Part of it is because being an artist is very solitary work.
True. That could be.
When I left Bradford and we moved out to, I wasn't living here when I came to Bradford. I was actually living in the city. But when I married and moved into Glenview, I had a beautiful little studio upstairs, and it's solitary work.
Yes, you just
So,
working while you have the light and
Right.
keep.
Right, had a nice space, beautiful yard, great big space, great community, great neighbors. But it wasn't until later on that I actually met some other artists in Glenview.
Would you
Just by accident, actually.
Well, I noticed that the Glenview Library often display
Yes,
artwork.
they've started
Did they
to do
always
that.
been like
No. Once Glenview was remodeled,
that? Have more display
and had,
space.
Exactly. And they just do a beautiful job.
Yes, that's why I was thinking maybe that you feel the support from Glenview to be interested in art
Oh,
and
it's
display
wonderful.
and perhaps
That's part of the way I started to meet people that were
Yes.
of artistic mind. You know, the Glenview Park District
yes.
is
They have
where I
classes.
found they have beautiful. I don't know that. Do they have classes?
Yes, they have some classes.
See, I'm
for,
not even aware of that.
artists.
But
Well, how
they
did
have
you meet?
I saw the paintings hanging there.
Yes.
And I started to ask questions about that. Those beautiful paintings,
Yes.
time and again. And then the library started to follow suit once that was remodeled. So,
So how did you meet? You say the artist community through
well, just started to
seeing the
seeing
exhibits.
artwork,
Yeah.
seeing artwork, and then actually the library had I guess they would call it an exhibit, a small exhibit,
Yes.
actually
For local
physical
artists.
for local artists. And just a few of us were there,
How
publishers, yeah. And I actually met, had friends and family come, but also met some artists that day. Also, the very large the art fair that they have at the Glen, in the Glen there.
Mm-hmm. I believe they do
Yeah.
that once a year or something.
Once a year.
Yeah.
I've met some artists there through that.
About that local exhibit with Glenview Library,
Mm-hmm.
did that also lead to a painting?
As a matter of fact, that was a book exhibit, but I happened to have brought some of my architectural renderings. And Jennifer Black at the library asked me if I'd be interested in doing a commission for the library now that they finished it. And so that's what led to the watercolor portrait of the Glenview Library.
Oh, special.
It was very nice. It was quite an undertaking. We had to do quite a few things to get that to look the way it looked, because it's a huge building.
Yes.
So there were some tweaks in there as an artist that we had to discuss to make it work. To make it work, yeah, because without giving a lot of the secrets away, the library is so large that to actually get an angle of the library that really shows all the
It fits into a painting.
well, not
right?
just because of the scale of it, but to get all the architectural beautiful features
Yes.
to really come forward into the painting. I had to do a little artistic licensing
Right,
of
right.
embellishing this, bringing this in,
The scale might have to
scale
change
this
it,
up,
yes.
pull that back.
So that's why
So-
that's very interesting, because people usually don't see that.
You don't
they,
see it.
They recognize it's
Right,
a Glenview Library,
that's
but they
right.
don't know why.
Right.
Because we're not
Right.
seeing it with a scientific mind.
Right.
Right. We're seeing it
Right.
with those features in our heads.
Right. You
Or
see
we're
a
matching
piece of it,
those.
a piece of it,
Yeah.
a piece of it, or you might walk in the entrance and see a piece of it.
But it's not
to
a realistic.
it's not
yeah,
really
a photographic.
right.
image
So
of
to
it.
stand in the middle of the street and to take a picture of it still wasn't going to show all its best features. So when I was able
clever,
to do that
yeah.
collaboration, it really turned out nice. And then they made wonderful cards as a result. So that's
Yeah.
what's nice about home portraits, architectural renderings. You literally I give them to a printer and we make cards. So the
And-
library has nice cards to
use.
use as whatever they need.
And people, so many of our residents have seen it. They just
Yeah,
didn't know you
that's
you
right.
made the
That's
wonderful
right.
painting for us.
Yeah,
Well, thank you, Kathy,
You're
for being on
welcome.
our program.
you're welcome.
And thank you for watching. Join us next time on Off the Shelf.